Hello, hello. This is Melissa, LPC from Texas here, getting ready to join at Nurturing Minds Counseling to present our fourth IG Live. Today's topic will be self as context. We are excited to explain to you what that is and talk a little bit about some definitions and maybe do an experiential exercise so that you can kind of get a feel. Hello. Oh, here's Nurturing Minds. Let me get her in here. Hi.
Hey, hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Can you hear me? Because whenever I put my AirPods on, I'm never sure.
I know. Yeah, I can hear you and I can see you. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect.
How about you?
Yep, you're good. You're
All
good.
good? Cool. I do want to mention I've got a little bit of a cold coming on, so I've got my
Okay.
hot tea and honey here in case I go into a coughing attack at some
Oh,
point. So,
oh, that's the worst.
I know it's like that tickle in your throat, it's just kind of constantly there, but we're gonna hang in there. We're gonna get it done.
Oh, yeah, and thankfully it's Friday, so hopefully you get to rest during the weekend and feel better.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so excited to jump in. I cannot believe this is our fourth IG Live.
I
Wow.
know.
It seems like it's gone by fast and
Yeah.
slow at the same time.
Right, I was thinking, I was like, fast when we're doing it, but slow, I feel like when we're planning it. I don't know, it's like this weird, like, oh, it's like already our fourth one. I'm like, oh yeah, we've already done four. Like, how crazy.
I know, right? Yeah. So you want to jump in? We'll introduce ourselves and we'll just jump into our topic that we're going to talk
Yeah,
about today. Okay.
sure.
I introduced myself quickly before you signed on, but I'll say it again. I'm Melissa Stringer, and I have a private practice here in Texas. And yeah, you,
Yeah.
Diana?
I'm Diana Garcia. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Florida, and I have a private practice here in Florida.
Cool. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about acceptance and commitment therapy, one of the core processes inside of that model. We're both huge fans of the ACT approach, which stands for acceptance and commitment therapy. And just a brief definition of that is it's a type of therapy that helps you learn how to accept that which you cannot control, whether that be external life situations or internal difficult challenges, feelings, memories, bodily sensations, any of those private events that happen. It gives us mindfulness skills to help us learn how to manage those and get unhooked from those sticky thoughts and be able to turn and pivot towards what matters in life and engage in behaviors that would make a meaningful life.
Yeah,
So what would you add anything to that?
I think you pretty much summed it, but I think the thoughts that come to mind, I think we've talked about this concept of psychological flexibility, exactly like you said, being able to handle those internal experiences as well as anything external and being able to still pivot towards what matters, right? So being flexible in light of whatever's thrown our way, both internally or externally.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have already covered, let's see, we have covered acceptance,
Mhm.
diffusion, present moment, or those are the three,
Yeah,
right?
those are the three. And our fourth is today, self as context.
Yeah. So should we do a brief overview of the other ones, or should we just let bygones be
Uh,
bygones and jump straight into self context?
I mean, maybe we could just do like a quick, I guess, one sentence summary on each one. So I think we started with diffuse. In my head, I'm like looking at this
The
hexaflex because it's
hexaflex.
it's a model, and as you see on Melissa's cover page of all the IG lives, it's that model that we're going by. And so I think we started with diffusion, which really simply it's learning to create distance from our thoughts or feelings when we get, like you said, I think those sticky thoughts that
Hmm.
sometimes we feel like they're calling the shots. So diffusion was really like trying to create some more space. And then I
Right.
think from diffusion, we went to acceptance.
Acceptance, right? Absolutely. And again, kind of in the intro, talking about acceptance and commitment therapy. Acceptance is not this, I'm giving up on life, I'm becoming despondent, I just have to deal with it attitude. It's more about there are certain things in life that happen that are not optional. You know, like we lose people, we lose jobs, we switch roles, we transition, different things are happening in our lives. And just learning how to accept those things that are out of our control, and not spiral in, you know, unhelpful narratives about those things that are happening. So yeah, basically that's what the acceptance process is about. And then the last one was present moment.
Yeah, and so like we all, I think we said it's hard to distinguish each one because really when we're doing therapy, you're seeing like almost like these ninja moves where they're all happening at the same time,
Right.
right? It would be like, you know, lifting your leg when you're, I don't know, trying to do this complicated move.
Yeah.
And so that present moment, it's more so this ability of really coming back to being in the here and now, especially because a lot of times one of the reasons we get so distressed is because we're losing focus with that. We're getting caught up in, you know, thoughts about the past, or, you know, anxiety about the future, or really also getting kind of sucked in by some of our emotional reactions. And even though it feels like we're in the present, at some point we've kind of lost touch with what's actually in the moment. And we've just
Yes.
kind of, that emotional experience has spiraled again, either to focusing on the past or the future or whatnot. And so present moment is really being able to use that skill to come back to the here and now to help ground yourself. And then potentially that might be enough in the moment, or use one of these other skills in conjunction to really help you move forward in life, whatever that looks like in the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's well said. Yeah, so as we kind of segue into our process that we wanted to discuss today, self as context, I think we had talked about briefly when we were planning this out that we just kind of wanted to add this disclaimer that this is a abstract concept, and you know, you and I, we talked about when we were
Yeah.
first learning this stuff and like learning how to actually apply it in session. This was slippery and it felt weird, and it was just like, oh my god, I sort of totally concretely get all the other processes, but I really feel kind of stuck on this one. And I think that's like kind of a common reaction of a lot of people learning this, either from the client end or the practitioner end. So we just
Yeah.
wanted to put that out there as we go into this today.
Yeah, like full disclaimer that I think of all the processes, this is one that's the most kind of abstract. I always tell my clients, okay, follow me. This is like an abstract concept. And even like you can see it in my face, like I'm trying to grasp the concepts when I'm trying to explain it. And similarly to you, I think most clinicians that I work with that have done like a lot of the act work will kind of say similarly that self as context, this process tends to be difficult to grasp. I think our hope in today's discussion is really using some metaphors, exercises that really help, because I think really this concept is one where it's not so much like your mind's going to grasp it. It's more of like tuning into your experience makes it easier to understand.
Absolutely right. It's you cannot verbally nail it down. Like you just said, it's an experience. So we're going to try to kind of bring a taste of that experience, not expecting like, oh, I've got it after I listened to Melissa and Diana. I've got it now. But just like a taste, a sense of kind of what we're getting at. So maybe if we kind of start with some synonyms of how other people do try to verbally nail it down, just to get a sense of it. I think we said observer self is probably the most common one that's used. I've heard people use a calm center, and like a transcendent sense of self is another one, another way, or pure awareness is another way I've heard it described. Is there any you would add to that list?
I think the one that comes to mind most often is the observing self, and more so the like awareness part, because it's this part of yourself that's just noticing everything. So maybe the noticing self, right? The part that's just kind of noticing everything that's going on internally in your experience. And so I guess maybe if we can jump into kind of when we were talking about it, I think the best way we were able to talk about it was there's this part of ourselves that holds space for all of our internal experiences. When we say internal experiences, that's thoughts, feelings, memory, physical sensations, that its job, it's just really to kind of hold space, like almost like a bowl that's holding all the experiences there. And I think, like you said, a synonym like the calming self, or sense
calm center, like a calm center, right? Because it's this this non-judgmental part of yourself that's been constant since birth, that has witnessed all of the unfolding behaviors, events, everything that's gone on inside, everything that's gone on outside. It's this ever-present, constant you. And no matter what situation you are in, where you are geographically, it doesn't, whatever age you were, there's still this sense of you has been this observer that has noticed all of these things throughout our life. And I think right when we start to get psychologically inflexible, kind of getting to the point, like, this is why we target this process in the first place, right? We'll get very attached to a conceptualized self, right? Like, I am anxious. I am a depressed person. I am this, I am that, I am a bad person, right? And these, right, when we get too wedded to these kind of rigid sort of self-descriptions or self-concepts, I mean, you can imagine how that can play out behaviorally, right? And how we can become beholden to these definitions of ourselves. And so this particular process targets to loosen that up a little bit. No, you are not those things. You are so much more than that. You're so much bigger than that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like when we get really stuck to those, whether it's a role or a feeling, right? Like you said, like, I am anxious. I think in therapy, I think that's like a caveat that I always tell clients, like, especially a client who, wants a diagnosis, meets criteria, and there's always this, like, sure, absolutely, that can be helpful to learn, to educate, but it's this fine line. I always tell clients that really notice then if your mind grabs onto, like, I'm an anxious person or I'm a depressed person, right? And I'll even, like, call my clients out, like, I'm depressed. And I'm like, no, let's kind of reel it in. You're noticing that you're having a feeling of sadness, because depression's a state, right? Sure. And so really kind of recognizing when these stories or narratives or roles, we get really stuck to them and they become almost like scripture. Like, yes. Now we have
the gospel.
Yeah.
We're buying it.
To this. Yeah. And anytime we don't, then we feel really bad, or when we do, we're feeling great. And so we get really kind of stuck to some of these roles or thoughts or feelings. And so this observer self really helps to, kind of said, loosen that kind of fixed hold and start noticing that that's not who you are, what you are. Right.
Yeah.
And so
just the content.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said. This part of you has been there for a really long time, because sometimes thinking this part of you was there, like, I'm sure you can relate to, like, middle school, maybe a moment in middle school where, gosh, maybe you just, something cringes and so forth. And there's a part of you that was there even at that point, right? That can kind of noticed everything that was happening then and is still with you. And 10 to 20 years from now is still going to be noticing all of your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. So just this very constant, stable, continuous sense of self.
Yeah. And I think, Melissa, when we were talking, you kind of gave this example. I really loved how you said it earlier. You can't kind of cut yourself up and find something. Can you kind of mention that? Because I think that one was like, I was like, whoa, I don't think I've ever heard that version of it.
Right, absolutely. And I wish I could give credit to the correct source. It's just one of the billions of ACT books that I've read through the years. It was this way of describing self as context that really hit home for me. I was like, so yeah, it was described as, you cannot do a surgical procedure and take out depression. You are not depression. You cannot cut you open and take out bad person. You cannot take out, physically extract anxiety. This is a concept, built off of symbolic verbal language. We are verbal beings, and right, it's all symbols, it's all concepts. But we begin to, like, literally, begin to no, I am that. I am that, right? Yeah. On this very literal, physical level. So yeah, I just found that really helpful when I read it. So it's a weird way of thinking about it, but I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, when you were explaining that to me, because I had never heard that, or it's that you're like, wow, absolutely. You can't just, like, rip me open and look for the anxious part of me that I don't like and take that out, or the not feeling good enough and take that out. That's one part of my experience. And I think this is the other part, that when I think of the observing self and this part of us, is that, a lot of times we think like, oh, clearly we enjoy when we're feeling joyful, grateful, these pleasant feelings, or having maybe positive thoughts, and,
Right.
you know, are feeling really good about the roles we're serving in our life. Like, oh yeah, I'm kicking ass as a therapist, as a mom, as a
Yeah,
wife,
yeah, yeah.
whatever. And we think like, yeah, we really, those are more important or hold more value. And really this part of ourselves that we're talking about states that they're all the same, right? That there
Right.
is no preference for this positive thought or maybe a negative thought, or an uncomfortable feeling or a comfortable feeling. There's this part of ourselves that we can always drop into that doesn't judge your experience. Its
Right.
job is purely to be aware of it and to
Hmm.
hold it. So it's like you said, you can't just go in and do surgery and take out this anxious part or take out the depressed part, because there's a part of yourself that's just holding it and gives it equal value as if you know, those joyful moments or that joyful experience. And so
Right.
I think that's really crucial. It's that it's a non-judgmental part of ourselves.
Absolutely. Like the container for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we had some great metaphors that we
Yeah.
want to also maybe, you know, to help this kind of hit home for folks. Um, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
let you do that part.
Yeah, I think what kind of one of the classic ones is when we're thinking of like the weather, right? So here in
Hmm.
Florida, right, there's prone to hurricanes, but as we think of, you know, hurricanes, rain, sunshine, we don't have hail here, snow, but up north, right? That's the weather, right? It's constantly changing. It's, you know, we clearly don't have control over it. It's doing what it's doing. And that, you know, if we link that to like, okay, those are maybe our comfortable thoughts or feelings, there's another part of us, which is similar to the sky, right? The sky is just holding all the changes that happens, right? The sky doesn't have a preference for whether it's sunny or whether it's raining, whether there's
Hmm.
hail or whether there's a hurricane. The
Right.
sky simply just holds it all, right? It doesn't judge it. It doesn't have a preference. It doesn't you know, want one more than the other. Its job is simply to just hold space for the entire experience. Nor is the sky in that moment like forever changed by the experience,
Right.
right? This part of ourselves, like the sky, is just holding it. And so sometimes it's recognizing, like, you know, let's say the thunder might be an uncomfortable thought, whereas the sun might be a feeling of gratefulness, right? That
Right.
sometimes we really want to hold on to the sun and really stay in that space when that's not really natural. Our experience is just going to come and go. And can you open up and just be like the sky, right? Because there's a part of yourself that can really hold on to it and not get really stuck to any particular weather.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Like down to the way you broke it down into emotions, like the thunder representing, you know, maybe something difficult and loud and abrasive, and
Yeah.
like the warmth of the sunshine and wanting to like really cling to that experience, like summer forever, you know. And right, life in the seasons and is just not that way. Things are always changing, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love how you said, because I think we've all seen it, and I've had experiences when, you know, the moments are going really well and we want to really hold on to that, and and that can even be a way of being really rigid, that like that's the
Yes.
only experience we want to have. And like you said, and what we all know, we live long enough, life changes, pain happens. And so we get really kind of rigid in that we can only experience these feelings of joy and we can't experience these uncomfortable feelings, right? And so
Right.
really kind of noticing that, again, there's a part of you that makes room for both of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another really good one, at least for that's helped me really understand this concept, it's this, you know, if we think of, and I think there was a period in Netflix where this really popular show came out. I forgot what it's called, with this like young chess player woman from the 50s. But either way, it's this example of thinking, like, let's say if we were playing a game of chess. So typically there's like the white pieces and the black pieces, right? And
Right.
so the white, you know, clearly the white piece moves forward, and then you know, counterattack with the black piece, and you move your knight or whatnot. And
Yes.
so sometimes it's thinking, I'll give clients the analogy of like, okay, so let's say the white pieces, again, are all those comfortable thoughts. Then we're like, we're feeling good about ourselves. You know, we just did great on that work project. I was just the best partner or whatnot, right? All those positive thoughts, right?
Right.
Or comfortable feelings, like I'm feeling grateful, I'm feeling happy. And
Yeah.
those black pieces are all those uncomfortable or unpleasant thoughts and feelings, right? So I'm not feeling good enough, or I did horrible on that work project. And a lot of times And I will say this is also because of a lot of messages we get of,
Oh yeah.
oh, we shouldn't have these black pieces, right? So, well, like,
Yes.
let's dispute these thoughts, right? And I always tell clients, let's dispute these uncomfortable thoughts of like, you're not good enough. And then you say, oh, no, but I am good enough. But then, no, your
Right.
black pieces come back and say, but remember that one time when you really dropped the ball, right? Don't you remember that? And your white
Right.
pieces are like, no, but that was just one time. Oh, the Queen's Gambit. That was the show. Yeah.
I love it.
That was the show I was talking about. Thank you for the help. But yeah, that we get really stuck in this kind of role of trying to battle, right? Where our internal experiences are battling each other. Particularly, I see this often with thoughts. And I think this goes back to because there's a lot of focus on like having positive thoughts, right? And looking for the silver lining. And that a lot of times, in my experience, and I'll tell clients, it's the more you try to battle these thoughts, unfortunately, your mind is like a ninja and will find all the reasons why and just start to really engage in that. And then that's when you're stuck in this chess game of like, more negative thoughts and then combating it with positive thoughts, but then more pieces show up and it's this never ending cycle. And same thing with certain feelings, right? When we don't want to have certain feelings like, okay, well, let's shift into like, let's focus on the positive about this and feel better about this situation. And so when we're thinking of the observing self, there's another part of us that's, again, just holding it. So in this example, can you let go of being the white pieces or the black pieces and just be the board? Right? Can you just hold and look at what's happening? Again, the board has no preference for who's winning the game, right? Who's doing better, who's not, who's dominating in this moment, who's showing up or who's not showing up. The board is just holding the entire experience. And that's, again, there's a part of us like the board that is that it's holding our entire experience of these positive and negative thoughts, these positive or negative feelings. I don't even really like to use those words, but again, just to simplify it, that there's a part of us, just like the board, that all it's doing is holding this and watching it, right? Watching what's going on, watching like, oh, look at that black knight move forward. Oh, look at that white queen show up, right? And this other piece, and this kind of goes to this, like, you can't take out this bad person. Those black pieces are equally as valid as those white pieces. Right? Because sometimes we get really stuck in them, like, oh no, only these parts of ourselves are worthy and good, and that's what I should focus on. And recognizing that these black pieces are just as valid and worthy of attention and observation and noticing them, right? They're, again, one doesn't have more power than the other or means more than the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And, I guess using the same metaphor, because I think a lot of people are like, well, what's the difference between diffusion and self as context? So I'm like, well, that's actually a good question because they're very similar to me, but I kind of think of like you were saying, the noticing part, right? Of the white type of thoughts and the black type of thoughts, the negative thoughts, the positive thoughts, the whatever, the neutral thoughts that swing by occasionally too. Like that's diffusion, that kind of noticing, right? But I feel like self as context is kind of diffusion on steroids. It's like you notice it and then it's like you say, but wait, who's noticing that you're noticing that? From which place, from what place, from where are you able to notice that you have negative and positive and neutral thoughts? What is that?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where it goes to this really abstract place of like when you think something, what's the part of you that's listening? Right? What's that part, right? When you think a thought, or you're like, what's the part of you that's kind of noticing that and listening to that? And again, this is where it gets really abstract, where you're like, huh, what part of me is it? Right. And again, that part of you has been part of noticing this entire time, right? Again, think about 10-year-old self and that awkward middle school dance was noticing what you were feeling and noticing what was happening and is still with you and just kind of noticing that experience. So it's kind of this sense of self. I almost, even though it's not like this linear part of ourselves that's been with us continually. And like you said, is this listening to all of it, holding it all.
Noticing, listening, experiencing. Yeah. Non-judgmentally. It's just
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I had a clinical example that I wanted to share that fits in very nicely with
Mm-hmm.
your chessboard metaphor. And so I've changed up some of the details to protect, obviously, no breaches in confidentiality here. So I'll just refer to this person as client X.
Mm-hmm.
So I was having a session, and I don't mean to distill or dilute this. Like, this was an entire session. I'm given like a tiny, like,
Yeah, like a
quick,
snippet.
yeah, a snippet of this, but it's an example of self as context happening in the moment and how powerful it can be to help someone out of an unhelpful spiral, like an unhelpful kind of thought spiral. So maybe this sort of gets more concretely at the heart of why do we use this process.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working with this individual, client X, and she came to me, and I could notice her. She was very urgent. She was very distressed. And she was like, I have this issue, for hours and hours I've been struggling with my sexual identity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like, am I gay? Like, am I straight? Am I bisexual? I don't know. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, all right, well, because this was the first time it had ever come up. So I was,
Sure.
letting it process it and land myself. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, all right. Well, I'm noticing, if we could just slow down for just a second, I'm noticing that there's like a lot of urgency around this for you. Like, there's something unsafe or dangerous, or like you've got to figure this out. You've got to be certain about this. And she
Yeah.
was like, well, yeah, like, I've just been thinking about it for hours, and I couldn't come up with an idea. And why? And then there's this other part of me that's like, well, it's okay. You're young. You have time to figure that out. You don't have to figure
Mm-hmm.
this out right now. I was like, okay, that makes sense. There's usually two dueling parts of our head, like the chessboard.
Right, the white and the black pieces.
Yes, exactly. Her white pieces were trying to calm down. It's okay. Don't freak out about this. And right, the black pieces are like, but what if this? But what if that? And but what if this? And what if you were wrong about that?
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, let's take a step back. Okay. And would you mind if we named these two parts of your mind? And she was like, okay. And so I wrote it down. Okay, calm and not okay. She was like, calm was the white pieces and not okay was
Yeah.
the black pieces. Okay, I was like, all right, we've named these two different parts of your mind. Now I want you to take a couple of deep breaths, kind of help her ground a little bit. Close your eyes, and I want you to back up, and I want you to envision these two parts kind of going back and forth the way that they have been for, it sounds like for a multi-hour period that really got you stressed out. And I was like, so watch that and just notice that going back and forth, and notice how that begins to impact you. And I ask her, like, how does this impact you? And she's like, well, I feel calmer. Like, I feel a little bit further away from it. Okay, awesome. Diffusion's happening.
Yeah.
And then just tears. And I was like, whoa, something powerful is happening here. And I said, okay, could you help me understand what these tears are about? What's happening for you right now? And she was like, they're just trying to protect me. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And she said, and I was like, protect you from what? And she said, rejection. She was thinking, her mind was playing this trick on her. If you figure out what your sexual identity is, that's a certain path to not being rejected. So that was like the function of her thinking.
Right. You'll be loved if you figure it out.
Right. And she was able to get to the heart of, we sliced right through the content, right? All that unhelpful content to boom, we touched what was real, like, I'm just afraid of being rejected at the heart of it. Right. And so and that's the type of powerful experience. Now she has that in her network. So, we planned, whenever we end the session, could you practice tapping into that part of yourself like we did today? Because the spiral will probably come up again, and that's normal and that's okay. You practice backing up and doing this like we did today, naming the two parts, watching them. And she's like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, so that's my clinical example.
Yeah, and I love that example because I think, like you said, there's so many different processes going on. Like, as I was hearing you talk about that, I was thinking, like, so even like just helping her like name the calm pieces and the non-calm pieces, right? Like right there, there's like diffusion, right? Let's name that story, create some space.
Yeah.
Like helping her ground and like, let's like breathe into it, right? So now we're also talking about present moment, right? So let's use that
Yes.
bridge to kind of come back to the here and now. And then you were able to get her, it sounds like, to a really powerful place of starting to just look at the grand, like the big picture, right? Look and tap
Yeah.
into a part of herself that was just kind of seeing this struggle and battle. And even it sounds like zoom out like to another layer and realize, oh, there's this part of me that's just trying to protect me and tell me like, if I figure it out, I'll be loved, right? And just
Right.
even noticing that story, right? And holding, and I think that's when I think of like the observing self, it's kind of noticing everything that's going on and holding that, right? Holding all of that,
Yeah.
holding that, the white pieces and the black pieces don't have more, that this story that you need to be loved, isn't more. The emotional outburst, right, that she could hold, that there's a part of her that she was tapping into that was able to notice all of that and hold space for it. I mean, that's, again, just my version. I could totally be wrong.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like your version. It makes sense to me. Absolutely. Yeah. It's just this all encompassing all of it,
Right.
like we just keep dropping stuff into the network. It's not just this. It's not just your battle with this, you're just your struggle or just this. It's all of these things and all of it is okay,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you have the capacity to hold all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me think, I heard a webinar not too long ago with Ricky something. She's a really prominent
Oh
therapist
yeah.
trainer.
Yeah.
And she was talking to another therapist, gosh, I wish I knew her name, but it was all about like pain. And, one thing she was talking about was like, she has chronic pain. And really, like, one thing that's really helpful for her is to drop into this sense of self, that she is not her pain, nor
Yeah.
is she her limitations when her pain becomes too much, right? Like whether she does something or doesn't do something, that's not who she is, right?
Right.
That there's a part of her that can notice and hold and kind of really, doesn't care what she's performing or not performing, if she's feeling pain or not feeling pain, just kind of holds her there, and that her sense of worthiness isn't based on that, right? And that,
Yeah.
again, it like really just makes me think of your client and your example of like really being able to, again, this, I know it feels abstract, but dropping into this part of yourself, right? Even in our most painful, difficult moments,
Mhm.
whether that's physical pain, emotional pain, that can really just notice and hold space for it, right? And just kind of
Yeah.
see and kind of notice what's happening. And I think going back to, that's why that part can also be like almost like a safe harbor for some people, because there is
Yes.
a sense of like, there's a part of me that can hold room for all this stuff. And I'm
Right.
not this stuff, right? I'm looking at a bowl, right? Like can hold room for all these things that happen to me, good, bad, or ugly, right? But
Yes.
I'm not those things, right? And that I
Yes.
can always kind of tap into that part that can hold and be a safe space for myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think it's so good for PTSD and trauma survivors, that necessity of being able to access that stable sort of place, that
Yeah.
place of continuity that, they've often not been able to experience.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I think there's another exercise that I think
yeah.
you said is really helpful to illustrate this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm gonna follow along. I'm gonna do it myself, like as I'm kind
Yeah,
of
me too.
having everybody else do it. So everybody that's watching, if you have like a piece of paper or something to write with and you want to follow along and do this exercise with us, this is an experiential exercise to kind of help you get a sense of this whole concept we're talking about today, self as context. So real simply, just we're going to be writing down 3 lines. So you're going to write I am, and you're going to draw a blank. And then you're going to write I am and draw a blank. And you're going to write I am and draw a blank. So write I am and blank 3 times. Okay. So I'm going to hush for a second for maybe 20 to 30 seconds and go ahead and just fill those out. Do whatever you want. You can do self descriptions, behaviors, roles, just whatever comes up to mind. There's no wrong answer here. Just I am, fill it out. Okay. All right. So I'll go first. In my first blank, I wrote, I am a therapist. Okay. All right. Well, that's true, but that's not all I am, right? One day I'll retire and I'll no longer be a therapist. I'm not a therapist everywhere. I'm not a therapist with everyone. I'm not a therapist all the time, right? So one day I'll retire and I'll no longer be a therapist. I'll no longer be able to say, I am this role. It's a role. Am I still me when I'm not a therapist? Well, yeah. I hope so. Yeah, I'm still going to exist, and I'm not going to be a therapist anymore. So, how about you? What did you put in your first one?
I'm laughing because I said I am a therapist.
Awesome, sweet.
I don't know if it's just because that's the first one that comes. Maybe because we're both doing this, like in this like role in this capacity. But
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
literally. I am a therapist.
Okay, cool.
So I thought the same thing, and I was even thinking like, when I clock off at a certain time, I'm not a therapist, right? I think there's a misconception of like when you meet people, like, are you therapizing me? Can you read my mind? No, you're not.
No,
I'm not,
no.
I'm not on the clock, but
I'm just me.
But that's funny that was my first initial, like, I am a therapist as well.
Yes, absolutely. So the second part of this is just strike through it, write a line, draw a line through it. Boop. Just we're left with I am. So what do you notice when you strike through therapist? Is there anything that comes up when you just see that I am sitting there?
Yeah, well, and I think this is really relevant to when I first became a therapist, and that I think I really held on to this title of like therapist, and I think that was a lot harder to let go of. And when I strike that out, I'm like, like you said, I'm not always a therapist, and there's still a part of me that still goes, I am. That was there before I was a therapist.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that was clearly always there before I was a therapist, and like you said, when I retire, will still be there.
Right. Yeah. I kind of get this sense, this dual sense of like a little bit of anxiousness, but like a little bit of relief, like, oh, yes, I am. I am more than that. But wait, what will I be doing when I'm not? So it's a little bit of a mix, but it's expansive. I like the expansiveness of it. So going to the second one, I am, and I put writing because I was writing then. I'm not writing now.
Yeah.
So I am not writing. I am not, we can't, right? Cut me open and pull out writing, right? I am not the behavior that I am doing.
Yeah.
I am not the behavior I was doing yesterday. I'm not the behavior I'm doing tomorrow. So just go ahead and, I'm going to strike through that too, because I'm not writing anymore and I don't do it everywhere all the time with everyone. How about you? What'd you put for that one?
I put, I am anxious. And so what's funny, it's like I was thinking about that. And even in this talk, because I've noticed my anxiety go up and go down, right? So what's funny, it's like when I wrote it, I wasn't as anxious, but when, like, as usually I notice the minute I start the IG live, oh, my anxiety is high, right? I'm like, it's there, it's up there. And then as you go, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in it, I'm in the groove, we're talking, we're just having conversation. So my anxiety kind of reduces. And so again, and if I were to take it a step, it's like, I am not anxious, right? That's not a state that I can claim. I'm not always anxious. Even in this, 20, 30 minutes that we've been on, my anxiety has gone up, has gone down. And that it's a feeling, right? It's a feeling of anxiety. I am not, you can't locate, like you said, you can't, there's that anxious part of my
there it is. Let's burn it out. Let's cut it out.
Arm, right? It's that's a part, or my brain, right? Let's find that anxious part, it's a feeling. And so when I kind of cross it out and recognize like that story, that feeling isn't always true. And it's funny because I always think too, like, can I think of someone who's more anxious than me in this moment? Yeah, I can. And vice versa. Can I think of someone who's less anxious than me? Probably, yes. Definitely a couple people come to mind who are cool as cucumbers. And so I think that's the other piece, that this kind of feeling and story that I make about being attached to it isn't always true.
Exactly. Yes. That's such a good example. That's cool. Thanks, Charlotte. And you're a wonderful therapist. Oh, thank you. I'm not sure who you're talking to, but thank you. So we'll do our last one. And mine is very similar, so we don't have to do a deep dive into mine. I put I am content. Nervous as well. I should have put nervous and content, but content just because it's a beautiful day here in Texas and I like have a nice day, a workout planned out later today that I know I'll enjoy. And it's the beginning of the weekend, so I'm feeling content. But will I feel content later today when my 3-year-old melts down? She goes home from school.
Probably not.
Probably not. I'm probably going to feel frustrated. I'm probably going to feel a little maybe impatient or frustrated, depending on how big the meltdown is. When I have to do chores, when I have to do laundry, I feel bored. So just kind of back to the sky and the weather metaphor. I am not my feelings. They come and they go, and I am the sky. So I'm content now. I might be nervous later. I might be frustrated later. All these things are just coming and going. They're just feelings. They're content that passes through me. I am not that thing. So boom, I'm going to cross it out because that's not me. Okay. So what we're left with is this all encompassing I am, subject, verb, bam. That's what we are.
Yeah.
What did you put for that last one?
I put I am caring. And so I don't know if it was because it was like an opposite. I was like, okay, I just did an uncomfortable one.
Pull for that white piece.
Yeah, let me get a white piece up in here, right? And so I put I am caring, which, makes me feel good for sure. I'm like, yeah, I'm caring for sure. But what's funny about that is even having that thought, I am caring, my mind can instantly, those black pieces can instantly go to, are you always caring? Were you caring this morning with your partner when he annoyed you? Probably not, right? Meaning, again, just noticing like even getting attached to something that maybe makes me feel comfortable in the moment, that's not always true. I'm not always caring, right? Like,
turn on a dime.
Yeah, not always, realistic. And it can lead to a lot of harm if one, I can't recognize that. If I can't see, like if I really hold on to, no, I am caring, I can't zoom out and see when maybe I'm not acting that way. And two, vice versa, can also lead me to get really stuck into this shame when I realize I'm not, because I've gotten so stuck to that, like, oh no, I have to be caring, right? That has to be part of who I am. And so when we cross that out, it kind of, again, this I am, it makes me think of my friend, also a therapist. I don't know if this is even his, he might have stolen it from someone else, but at Balancing Act Miami or something like that, he always says you're a human being, not a human doing, right? And so like all these are things that you're being, whether it's a role or if you're performing and so forth. And so can we drop into like this part of you that's not doing or performing, but you're just kind of being? And same thing, like I'm not always being a therapist, I'm not always feeling anxious, I'm not always being caring, right? Can I just drop into like just in that space of being like I am, right? And so that's also something that made me think of that I am part.
No, I think that fits really well. So I think that was mostly everything we wanted to cover today. I hope that this has been helpful and maybe distilling down kind of a complex concept, and given these examples and definitions and metaphors and exercises, that maybe you have a little bit better idea of what this is and why we do it and why we target it. It's sometimes the things that we don't understand that we need to experience to understand its value. And I totally think this is one of those things in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love anyone who actually did the activity, if they shared their kind of what you guys wrote down in the blanks and what was it like to just be left with I am. And anyone who watches the replay, what you shared, if you feel comfortable. I think Melissa and I both tried to be a little vulnerable in sharing like, some of these thoughts or feelings and so forth. But we'd love to hear that because, and whether you're a clinician or not, because I think I see some like therapy-ish people on there. And this is also such a great activity to use because I've used this activity and it's really helpful, especially when we get really stuck like to some of these like stories or roles or, feelings. It helps to kind of, again, just create some of that space and like, are you really those all the time, right? And I think this is one of those where it kind of sometimes takes it a little bit from out here in your mind and kind of helps to really have this like felt sense of like, oh yeah, I am, right? I am.
I am. I am, period. I
Yeah.
am, period. Yeah. So, yeah, if you guys liked this content today, feel free to share it. Leave us comments. I'm going to post it later so you can watch it on IGTV if you weren't able to stay for all of it or just want to share it with someone else. You can follow me at Connect and Reboot for more content like this. I'm an ACT practitioner, so most of my content that I post is mainly all in this vein of the ACT approach. And Diana, you want to tell them where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can also connect on Instagram. My handle is Nurturing Mind Counseling, so you can DM me, as well as I don't post them, but I have also YouTube called Nurturing Mind Counseling where I post them there as well as other conversations. And similarly, you'll see that I do a lot of ACT work and then just other kind of random ideas that come up. But yeah, definitely ACT is one of the. You'll see a lot of those ACT kind of either thoughts or notions throughout my posts and different conversations because something that I use personally, so it's hard to distill it out sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we've got 2 left. We'll be announcing that soon. So hopefully you can join us for those last 2 ACT processes. We'll be posting something soon about when we're gonna to do that. But thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your time today and for hanging out and listening to us. And we truly, truly hope that you left with a slightly maybe shifted perspective, maybe loosened up, maybe some of your unhelpful stuff, or gave you a tool or a different way of holding it. Because that's the name of the game. That's what it's all about. Psychological flexibility. That's what we're trying to promote. And that's what we hope you take away a little bit of that each time we present something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just echo that. I really appreciate your time, anyone who's watching live. And we appreciate all the comments and all the little hearts, too, that are showing up throughout. I didn't stop to comment on them, but throughout it was really helpful and encouraging. So we appreciate your time and energy. And we always say, like, any comments or feedback, if you guys like this type of content, these types of discussions, we have 2 more on the horizon. But again, I think Melissa and I are both open. Like, if there's something you guys are really like, oh, we want to know more about, we'd love to hear what that is. Because when we're kind of, I think both of us are creating content, we want to make sure it's of use to people who are
of service.
Of service and consuming it. So I think that's it. And so we just want to thank everyone for watching, and then have a good one. And I hope, Melissa, that you feel better and you get time to rest.
Thank you.
Your throat did great. So your tea
was did great. Good job, throat.
Yeah, it did awesome. It did not. No, because usually for me, I find that I'll have a coughing fit. Like, I don't know if you were in the session when you're like, oh, wait, and it's like you're having a coughing fit in like the worst time.
Possible time.
Yeah, yes. We can't control that.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. I hope everybody has an awesome weekend. You too, Diana. And
thank you.
Catch you guys later.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye.